Hello, and welcome to episode 77 of the Great Canadian Hockey Podcast. I'm James Parisi here with my co-host Aiden Sarah, and it is best on best season. The Four Nations face-off is absolutely buzzing, I will admit. And if you listened to last podcast episode, I was not the most excited. But Aiden, it's like a disease. You hear about it and you talk about it with people at work. Today at work, we were talking about the power play, talking about Canada's disgusting power play and just the players that Coach John Cooper gets to put out. And I started getting a little excited. I wasn't even caring about it at all until today. And now we are recording this just after Canada defeated Sweden 4-3 in overtime. And God, Aiden, I'm buzzing. I was shaking. How did you feel? How are you reacting? How are you feeling? What's new?
No, man, it was sweet. It was sweet. And it's, like the eras we shared and then the eras we didn't, right? And so for me, like it was right around I was 7 years old during the 2010 Olympics. So if there was anything that was going to make me fall in love with hockey, it was having that in our city, right? So to me, the best on best hockey's been the best forever. Like it's been what I've been waiting for. I felt like a giddy little kid watching Canada today because honestly, man, like I cheer for Canada at an international hockey level
Mm.
more passionately than any other hockey team that's gonna play, right? So in that respect, this was very cool. Um, as excited as I was for it, and as excited as I was to see Mario Lemieux come out in Montreal,
That
were
was
you
so cool.
also were you also like by like the 20-minute mark maybe ready to just watch the hockey? Because I thought how
No,
long no, good. I'm glad.
I like good presentation. I
Yeah.
really enjoy showmanship. I really think they put a lot into it. I thought that from just a visual standpoint in the broadcast, um, I'm 90% sure they gave everyone in attendance those glowing lights,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
I saw Kygo in the fall, and they gave those out. I know people who saw Coldplay's The Spheres tour were given those lights. It is such a cool thing and such an interesting thing. Apparently, it doesn't even cost that much either. And everyone is basically just given a wristband with a little glowing ball on it, and it lights up with the crowd
Well,
all
and
in.
I thought it was really cool that like it was even programmed to go into the Swedish colors during the national anthem, right? Like that was the coolest part for me was the fact that you had the presentation be the Swedish and the Finnish influence there I liked.
Totally.
And then the reception that Mario Lemieux got was really cool too. And that's a guy that's never played for the Montreal Canadiens. And obviously, it's the French Canadians and their French Canadian hero. So it's not a surprise that he got the reception he did, but for him to get it, and then obviously for the way the game played out immediately after with his de facto protege Crosby being as dominant as he was, that was really cool.
Did you know it was Mario as soon as they started talking? As
For
soon as they
sure.
got to the Canadian player
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they mentioned whatever Canada Cup that was. Before they even got to the numbers, I looked at my roommate Caleb and I went, "Ah, it's Mario."
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. But I didn't know they were doing this. I don't know if you knew, but I sat down with my pizza and I got ready to watch, and I just hear them start calling out legends of the game. And the first player that walks out is Solani, and I'm like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
Immediately, every time I see Teemu Solani, I'm just like, this is like the coolest person in existence. For those of you who don't know, he is not just a Hall of Fame hockey player in the NHL. He is not just Finland's all-time leading, no, the Olympics all-time leading scorer for men's hockey, right?
Points. Yeah.
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 And then he's also a stock car racer. He once in a while plays tennis with, I believe it's Federer. I want to say it's Federer. It might be like Nadal or something like that, but I think it's Federer. And he's just like he has his own steak restaurant where he goes in and helps cook. Like he is just the coolest guy in existence. And seeing him walk out, just dapper as all hell. He looks like fit and young enough to still be playing.
Listen, he always looks like that, though. I don't know if you've
Yeah.
seen Timu Solani in general. That is very Timu Solani. That's just how he is, man.
Are him and Lundqvist ever gonna age?
I think it's a Swedes thing. It's a
Scandinavian thing?
Scandinavian thing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Where because Alfredson, I thought as well, like could have plucked him out of mid
I don't
2010s.
know. I don't know. Alfredson kind of like I had seen a funny TikTok about a driver's test instructor who looked eerily similar to that, and that's all I could think of when I was seeing him. It
That's
didn't take away from anything, but I just kept thinking that. But yeah, I totally get what you're saying.
He's been so involved with Swedish national hockey forever, right? Like I just seeing him today. We saw him a couple months ago when he was involved with the Swedish U20 team, right? And it was cool to see Mario Lemieux come out and do the lineup read as well in the dressing room. You saw the clip after the fact. I'd imagine they didn't want to spoil his appearance on the broadcast, but
Mhm.
once he came out for the intro, they ran the clip of him in the locker room reading the starting lineup and saying hi to Sid. And man, like it's the whole spectacle, right? It's the whole event, and it's Lemieux, it's Alfredson, it's obviously you had Matthews and Barkov there for the opening, but the game gets underway, and it doesn't take very long for the game to to kick it into high gear. Um, Early and only power play, which was interesting of the game for Canada, but
Well, are you really gonna give that power play a bunch of opportunities in the game if you're a ref?
well, and it was how quick it was too, right? Like if there was anxiety about the personnel from that Swedish side, which obviously there should be, uh, you're terrified for the rest of that game because any question marks about their ability to execute went away pretty damn quickly, right? It felt like two passes, the puck was in the back of the net. You got the Cole Harbor connection, which was cool. Right after they had ran the Friedman interview pregame with Crosby and McKinnon, right? Um, and it doesn't take very long for Canada to get their second as well. But I'll go to you. What were your thoughts on, let's say, first period, second period, and then we'll pause through two, and then we'll talk about the third. But thoughts on the first two periods for Canada?
Well, Aiden, first things first, that power play unit you're talking about, they have Reinhardt out there joining McDavid, McCarr, McKinnon, and the one and only Sidney Crosby. That is disturbing. That's the aforementioned power play my foreman and I were talking about at work this morning, and all we could really do was laugh. And then they came out, took to the ice 56 seconds into the game. Nathan McKinnon scores on a beautiful feed from Sidney Crosby. Crosby passed it off to, was it McDavid?
Yeah, it was Crosby, McDavid. Crosby popped out from behind the net. McDavid fed it to him on the goal line, and it was that step
Yeah.
out spin on the backhand pass. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was so deceptive, but it felt so casual. Like it was something that didn't feel like, oh, my mind should be blown by this just from watching it, but also my mind should be exploding from watching it. It was the duality of man on that power play goal. It was ridiculous. And then it felt like no time at all before Marchand came in and scored again. I mean, I really like the nice little play with Jarvis and Point. The pressure there, it's a pressure cooker line, really. That is a line that is going to thrive in sustained offensive zone pressure. They're going to be able to tire out opposing defensemen. Like if you say if your top guys are a little tired and the opposing team ices it, I'm putting them out. Point's going to win you that face off, and you are just going to cook it through the offensive zone until it eventually goes in or some chance creates a power play. You know, like it's a lot of fun that can be had with this roster, and I feel like a lot of it was on display in the first period. But Aiden, did you feel like we kind of almost reached a lull for a bit? It was like Sweden started doing a little bit of suffocation, and but it wasn't mind-boggling, and Canada started to slow down a bit, and passes weren't connecting a ton, and I remember my roommate and I were sitting there saying it feels like these some of these guys haven't played together a ton yet, which is totally true. This is the first game. I mean, these aren't the guys you're playing with every day all year where you know exactly where they are, and that seam is going to meet them exactly in stride right before the blue line.
No, you could totally see the not just the fact that they hadn't played with each other, but the fact that clearly that they really hadn't. Obviously, we know they didn't play any pre-tournament games because we're in the tournaments and they didn't happen. But it really looked like a bunch of players that had very limited practices together too, right? Because, and again, we're not going to really dig the shovel too deep into the like minutia of hockey systems right now. But if you watch Nathan McKinnon, Cale Makar, uh, teams like Colorado and groups like Devon Taves, Cale Makar, Nathan McKinnon that play together a lot. There are passes and there are different ways that they set up in the offensive zone that are second nature in the NHL for them. Like the way that Colorado utilizes Taves and Makar attacking down the left and the right sides while they kick a guy up top. Like they basically 5-on-5 have the quarterback in the middle. It's the forward that pops out, takes the pass, and then both defensemen activate in down the sides. Like those in the NHL, that is so enshrined in these players that it's they don't even think about the movement or the passes, right? Like it's second nature. There were a lot of passes, man, that clearly it was a player looking for his club teammate that would have been there in the NHL and it just missed its target. Like there were so many of those, and some of them were giveaways. Some of them you probably could have noticed. Some of them were just a player chipping it into the corner and thinking that somebody's going to be there for the cycle, right? Like it's a ton of little things that, you know, obviously we've got the Finland US game tomorrow. They both had an extra day to practice, but by game 3 of the group, you'll see less and less of it. But to me, it was super obvious. When you say the game hit a lull, to me, it was the Shea Theodore injury, like
Mm,
completely. That changed the game because it felt a little bit like Canada's strategy, clearly in the first period, and then even to start the second, it looked like they had the spring in their step. It looked like Canada's strategy was, listen, we know we're more skilled than them. Let's outwork them 100% of the time. And then Theodore gets hurt, and it's almost like a mindset sets in of like, okay, we need to be cautious. And the defense with 5 defensemen sure needs to conserve the energy a little bit, right? If you're going 100% every other shift, that's a problem. But it's it's almost as if the okay, let's take the foot off the gas. Like it's almost like that infected the whole team, right? Like it stopped being go go go. It stopped being we're gonna take it to them every shift when Theodore got hurt, and you could see Sweden slowly build back into the game, right? And I think Canada's success is definitely going to count on them being better with the lead than they were today.
totally. I totally understand that. And I was thinking the same thing. Um, I feel that my prediction that Sweden would be incredibly dangerous in this tournament was so validated as soon as Adrian Kempe took his first shot of the game. As soon as that happened, all of a sudden it went, uh-oh, wait a minute. These guys actually are pretty good. We should respect them. And then I felt like the Canadian roster's mindset changed. The way they were approaching small puck battles along the boards and neutral zone pickups changed a lot. I felt like they tightened up in even their pass receptions. Like they weren't accepting passes in heavy long strides as much anymore. And it seemed like they were kind of mapping out their next move a little bit more. And that's why Canada's motto when selecting for these best on best tournaments has always been skill adapts. And that's when you watch skill adapt on the fly. It's incredible to see because these guys just have so much higher skill sets and motors than 99% of players we watch on a day-to-day basis. And you're following junior hockey and you're working in it, and we're both watching professional hockey. And I mean, there's a reason this is best on best. There are a couple guys on every team who are maybe like this. And when you see it all together, there's some things that just stand out more and some things that stand out less. I mean, there are players who look slow out there who make your favorite player look like a slug during an NHL game. But that's because they're trying to keep up with a William Nylander, a Nathan McKinnon, a Connor McDavid. And Eric Carlson was fast as all hell For I mean, three or four different rushes, I went, oh my God, he's turning back the clock again. It's to the kind of thing where these guys are giving it their all. And what about when the physicality stepped up in the second period? I really like that. There was a shift where that Konechny line was out there and he laid a hit. Then one of his line mates laid a hit. Then two Swedish players laid hits. And then I checked and there had been 7 hits in 1 minute. I went, okay, all right, here it is. Here's passion. These guys want to win. They want to run through a wall. And that calmed a lot of my worries about this tournament, where some guys might not care about it as much.
Yeah,
I
no,
I'm
and dude,
thrilled. I love
a-
it.
and it's game one. I think that's the
Yeah.
best part was the fact that it's as good as it is, and um, for Canada, it's been a lot of positives here. Uh, we got to talk about Sidney Crosby, man. Like
Hold on. I'm
we got to
glad you
hit
brought
that
this
nail on
up
the head.
because for those who are listening, they always see that Aiden comes up with some fairly creative podcast titles
Okay,
for our episodes. And if you are listening to this, you've already seen the name of the episode. If it's not Crosby, 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 I think we failed as a hockey podcast. I
okay.
think it has to be the name of the episode. They already know it. They already read it. They already know if you didn't listen to me and you changed it last minute because you thought of something better. But realistically, I don't think there's anything better because the way that crowd chanted his name, not just after the game when he's eventually named first star, which we will get to, but sometimes just when he touched the puck. That's all it took. Before we go Crosby Foley, can we continue talking about that crowd? Because the way the Bell Center erupted every time a Canadian player hit full speed and started breaking into the offensive zone, at first I thought it was just for McKinnon rushes because they were looking so fun, or just because of McDavid rushes because they look so fun. But then I saw Josh Morrissey cross the blue line and they went, yeah. And they're all just on their feet. Is the Bell Center always rocking like this, or is this just for this?
I'm going always rocking like this. Montreal home games are very, very good and very, very cool. The thing that Montreal fans have the tendency to do a little bit is audibly voice displeasure if their team is playing bad. You don't often see teams be booed as much at home as Montreal is.
Yeah, they
Um,
booed Saku Koivu in like one of his first couple games back from cancer.
Yeah, like they let it be known when they're not happy with the team's performance, like on a shift to shift basis. So that's the semantics and the details about the crowd in Montreal. But in terms of electricity and the atmosphere when things are good, it's hard to beat. It really is.
I really want to go, but
Me
I
too.
specifically want to go for one thing. I want to go for the first game of playoffs when they have the kids skate out to the middle of the ice and light that torch. I want that. There are two things on my hockey arena bucket list. No, three actually. I want to see a playoff game at Pepsi Center. Well, not Pepsi Center, Ball Arena, in Denver. I would like to go to Madison Square Garden for any game, preferably like a weekday, because I've seen that like they're really really good weekday crowd. I remember someone telling me that on weekends it's a lot more hoity-toity.
More expensive tickets. That's
Oh,
why.
yeah. Oh, yeah. At like the best arena in sports. And then the one I just mentioned, the torch being lit. I think it's one of the coolest things I've ever seen. But yes, Sidney Crosby. Um, what is his record? His undefeated record as Canada's captain?
Undefeated record. This is the 26th game in a row that he has won at best on best competition. Specifically being captain, it would have had to have been six in the World Cup. Oh, sorry. I'm including World Championship stats in that 25 straight games unbeaten. Best on best record specifically, he hasn't lost since the group stage of the 2010 Olympics. And as captain, this is he's going into his fourth tournament as captain, and he's never lost a game as captain. They went 6-0 in Sochi and won. They went 6-0 in the 2016 World Cup and won. And now here we are in his third tournament as captain, and
Beautiful.
he had an A in 2010. Niedermeyer was captain.
Yeah. Beautiful. I love it. My roommate who I keep bringing up, he's in Aiden and I's fantasy hockey league. Good friend of mine. His name's Caleb. I don't think he'll be listening to this. He's currently playing Battlefield 1 in his room, which is a game from 2015. Amazing they still have servers. But he said before the game he couldn't find a player prop for Crosby to lead the tournament in points, but he wanted to find that so bad. What do you know? 3 points already. Off to the races. Love to see it. Aiden, I want to move on from Crosby because we're going to end up talking about him all tournament. I want to
Really
go
quick though,
to
really quick. 3 points, 3 assists. Like these were not like so, you get empty assists, okay? You do. It happens. And I don't
phantom
like
assist.
saying yeah, yeah, like secondary assists where you poked the puck in the defensive zone happen, right? They do. Like we're talking 3 Sidney Crosby assists, 3 primary assists, right? Three
That
goals
were
that
all
don't
incredible.
yeah, the first one, go watch it. It's art. The second one, honestly, likewise, it's not going to get as much love, but Crosby's play on that was almost as nice. And then the third one in overtime, like we're going to talk about overtime, we'll get to it, but like the entire time, I was saying out loud to Caitlin here, like, where is Marner? Like, please put like I when Brandon Hagel was out, I'm like, okay, please put Marner on the ice now, like because I kind of understood they were really riding their the big guns at the beginning, but when Hagel and Point came out, I'm like, okay, we better see Mitch on the next shift, and sure enough, it was Mitch and Crosby connecting. But part of the reason that I A wanted him to be out there, and then B was so impressed when the two of them were specifically Crosby and Marner, it's awareness of when to go and attack somebody straight on, right? And I thought in the overtime, McDavid and McKinnon, it was how many solo rushes did we see? But they were all one and dones, right? Like Marner in possession in the offensive zone was the only guy that managed to sustain pressure and get multiple chances and keep the puck on his stick beyond one rush. Um,
Okay,
and
but McKinnon had 5 of those.
yeah, oh, and dude, I'm not gonna like say don't give the puck to McKinnon, don't let him do that, right? But
I think 2 of them almost went in.
yeah, oh, two? I counted more than two because the first one, yeah, I think he forced Gustafson to freeze it 3 times, which
Yep.
is usually what I don't like about those one and dones. Is it the okay, you missed and now it's a 3-on-2. So
Mm.
at least in those instances, they were able to get the offensive zone draw every time. But I am skipping ahead a little bit, James. The biggest thing, like this entire like build up team roster news, and again, we're Canadian, and our vested interest is in the Canadians winning this tournament, and so the thing that we heard was going to stop the Canadians from winning it, and the thing that
Aiden, this is what I was transitioning to earlier, and you handcuffed my transition, so I'm transitioning yours. I want to talk about a player that you don't love and you probably don't always love talking about unless you're complaining about him usually. This is usually the
okay,
case. And it's a player that I am always playing devil's advocate for because I love him. We're talking about Canada's goaltender, Jordan Binnington, 2019 Stanley Cup champion. He let in 3 goals in that game. On the call, play-by-play guy said Binnington probably wanted that one back on one of the goals. Went just under his arm, I believe. And other than that, I did not have a single issue with him the whole game. And I think Aiden's going to like why. Because this was the dialed right in Jordan Binnington. The one where he's done all of his breathing exercises and like head meditation things where he's going side to side before the game. This is the one where he looks flat calm to the point where I'm worried there is a demon controlling his brain and not letting him move. like not letting him move his eyes. He is just cool as a cucumber. And he doesn't get uppity at all. He just looks ready for anything that may come, especially adversity. Because when Canada loses that lead, that's the Binnington you want. That's the one that will actually keep holding it together, not end up losing it, not end up trying to slash out a guy's ankles and yell at him and chase him down the ice. None of those things. Those are the things that Aiden and probably many other people don't like. I find it very entertaining, but not when it is this short of a tournament. You know what? He's probably going to have an uppity moment. I think he's going to be the starter of the whole tournament because how damn good did he look in overtime?
Yeah, I was gonna say about Binnington right off the hop that, you know, if you're going to be the reason they don't win in 60 minutes, be the reason they win in overtime, right?
Like it.
Like that was his game for me. Um, because yeah, like the first goal was through a little bit of a screen. I want him to save that. It's not one that I'm like I'm gonna crucify a goalie for, right?
That screen one, I had no beef with whatsoever.
The screen is a little bit generous there, right? Like
Well,
it's
it
a
was
sh
because it was closed, and our listeners can't see what I'm doing with my hands, but the gap was closed. There were four guys that all moved outward right after the shot came off. So like, I
yeah,
don't
you're
think
no
there
no
was a
no.
screen anymore.
Listen, you're right. And if the puck had hit where the post meets the crossbar and gone in, I'm not saying anything. It was in the middle of the net. It was.
Right.
Like so to me, it's positioning, right? The guy has the puck on the half wall and he throws it in the middle of the net. Save it, right? Like it's just that should just hit you on the chest. But regardless, like again, I can excuse the mistake there. The Kempe one was brutal, right? And so like this is something you and I talk about every single time we talk, or every single time, especially with these versions of these teams that we've talked about, Canada, USA. One of the reasons that I'm so high on Canada to win is the big game ability. It's the ability, it's knowing what to do when the moment matters the most. When there's like, and Jordan Binnington has proven in his career that despite what he does again in the regular season on a Thursday night in December when he's taking two hands to the back of somebody who like breathed on him and everybody's mad at him, guess what? When it matters most, game 7 of the Stanley Cup final, he's a guy who's been there and he's a guy who's done that. And I think I think, you know, looking at Bennington's career on the what he does in the regular season, how he is in the playoffs, like on a very scaled down level, that was this game. He let in a goal he needs to have against the Americans in the final, right? Like that's a goal you're allowed to let in game 1 and that's it. But then again, when it mattered most, when he needed to make those saves, like that one on Zibanejad, the stick discipline there, that's all him, right? Like that's a really underrated save that he made on Zibanejad because he was a little bit slow pushing off.
I
It was
agree.
almost like he somehow didn't read the play that was telegraphed, right? Like he was just a second behind it. But then it's the not being desperate and going the full splits and leaving 6 feet of your 5 hole open. Like he was very conscientious of where everything in his body was. And the stick save, like I was super, super impressed with that save specifically. He obviously made the blocker one as well. The reason I'm harping on that stick one is because he made like visually nicer ones, but that was the one that impressed me the most just because of the way he made it. Like again, so to me, the reasons that I would want Bennington in the net, he showed in this game, and the reasons I wouldn't want Bennington in the net, he also showed in this game, right? So, um, I'm 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 glad that if Canada gets to another overtime with him in net, I'm not gonna be super nervous, but we'll see on Saturday how he handles, you know, the shots that we know guys like Kyle Connor and Austin Matthews and where do I go next? The Kachucks, Eichel, right? Like you got Hughes on that forward core. Like there are so many guys on that American team that you give them half an inch and they're going to take it, right? And half a mistake and it's a goal in the back of your net. So, um, Canada, when it mattered, they got the performances from the guys they needed. And speaking of guys that aren't big game players, James, and guys that often get criticized for not showing up in the big moment, Mitch Marner wins it in overtime. How about it?
Um, Caleb and I were discussing whether or not the guys in the Canadian dressing room approached him in an intervention style way before, like as they were finishing their first or second practice together and said, Mitch, if you do the gritty, we're not going to stand for playing with you on the Olympic team. If you score and do the gritty, it's over. Like we
There's
might send you home. We might play a man short.
there's no way they said.
Are you sure? Are you sure there's no way they said that? Because I think there's a lot of guys. You think Mark Stone's okay with that?
No, I think Mitch Marner isn't hitting the gritty here, personally.
I don't think he is either, but
Yeah,
what if it just takes over?
I think that idea, like, if one of those vets thinks he might do that, they're going to also be like, no, he wouldn't do that. That's so stupid. That's my thought process on that.
Totally fair. I was very worried he would do it, and I had it pop in my head, oh my God, what if he scores in overtime and does it? And then as soon as the puck went on his stick, I was like, oh my God, he's gonna score. Is he gonna do it? And then I was just watching, and the camera panned away from him, and I was like, God, he's doing it right now, isn't he? He's grittying. He must be. And that was the thought in the back of my mind as I'm high-fiving my roommate and yelling. And then I look over and it showed me a celebration. I'm like, we're good. We're okay. He didn't gritty. Thanks, Mitch. I like that. Uh, I I didn't think it was gonna be him. I thought one of those McKinnon rushes was going to end up resulting in that. And also, as soon as I saw Makar, McKinnon, and McDavid on the line in that 3-on-3 line on the ice together, I just went, "Oh my God, this is history. I'm watching history right now. These players have never played together before. McDavid's
No,
never played with McKinnon and Makar.
no, with McKinnon and McKinnon with Makar. I don't think Makar and McDavid ever shared a team. That's the one that
Yeah,
breaks the trio there. They'd never played together.
that was so cool. I just remember thinking I got kind of giddy. I was really excited. I was looking at that and just thinking, this is just so damn cool. And that's the thing we've missed out on over the years. And that's the kind of thing that makes me so excited when I see that Gary Bettman and the NHL have announced that there will definitely be a World Cup of Hockey in 2028. So we've got our Olympics in 2026, which is next year. Then 2 more years, World Cup of Hockey. 2 more years, another Olympics.
Yeah, and we got confirmed tonight by Elliot Friedman, Darren Dreger, both, and Pierre LeBrun. Actually, I think all of them were talking about like it's locked in. Period. Right? Like it's going to happen. Starting next year, it will be every other year for 3 tournaments for sure. Um, Two other things were established tonight. Looking down the line. So one of them, James, the World Cup of Hockey, 8 traditional countries will compete in 2028. So we're not going to have North America U23 or a consolidated Europe like we had in the last World Cup. I am very happy about that. I know how cool that North America team was. I know that thinking about Bedard and Celebrini and Hagens and McKenna, like I understand the allure of putting that team together, but Canada Europe in the final just didn't feel right. Like and maybe if Sweden beats Europe in that semifinal, we forget that there was a team Europe and we forget that it's right. Like we forget how big of an impact those random teams had on the tournaments like unfolding and how prominent they were. Um but with how good like the top end guys on a Germany are now, I want to see Germany there, right? Like it's not just the
Yeah.
fact that like the world champion Czechs aren't there this year, which obviously sucks, and
Well,
obviously the Czechs would be like, yeah, like obviously the Czechs would be staple to the top of a World Cup of hockey. But I'm even saying like having a Leon Draisaitl and Tim Stützle led Germany team would be cool. Having Roman Josi and Timo Meyer with Switzerland would be cool, right? Like, so. to me, I know how cool Team North America was. I think this is the much better way to do it. The other thing, and again, I know people don't like the politics and sports mix. I think you're a little bit naive if you won't acknowledge that they're linked extremely linked, more so than I, as a sports fan, would like them to be linked, but you can't deny what the reality of the situation is. Um, there needs to be Russian resolution before Russia is allowed to compete in these things. So that's the other one that we heard today about all this news is that I think I think the way it was phrased was something to the effect of getting the situation figured out is how I saw it phrased in in what I was reading. Um, but those are the two things that we've learned is traditional countries, and one of them being Russia is contingent on something changing from now, which smarter people than me can say about the likelihood of that happening.
Yeah, I have this really unfortunate trait after working in news where as soon as I start thinking about politics, my brain just like glazes over and goes into like a paralysis kind of state. But then like I heard you close it and I was like, okay, I'm back. I'm back. I went into some dark place somewhere. I don't know where that was, but I'm back. I'm back. We're good. And I agree with the sentiment that you most likely shared. I'm assuming that like Russia needs, from a political standpoint, Russia kind of needs to be dealt with. But dude, there are so many good Russian players in the NHL right now.
Yeah, well, and I actually I had my dad text me prior to the game asking for my lineup, which I didn't have on hand for him, like a hypothetical Russian lineup for this tournament, and what I said to him was, to me, like if we're taking a step back and we're looking at like the top 10 hockey countries, the talent Russia puts together puts them in tier one with Canada and the US
Yep.
for me. And Sweden, Finland, and the Czechs are in a tier two, and then you've got Slovakia, Switzerland, Germany, Latvia in the next group. Like, and I think and I'm doing Sweden a little bit of a disservice, but like the high end Russian talent, the goaltending, it's very very good. And obviously seeing Ovechkin in this tournament, that's what a lot of people are feeling in their hearts. But much in the same way that we've never seen Connor McDavid, we've never seen the Kale McCarr, Nathan McKinnon play for Canada at the best on best level, like Kirill Kaprizov, right? Like there are Russian guys. Matvei Michkov comes to mind that we would love to see on the international stage for the first time. We haven't seen Canada since 2016. We haven't seen Russia since 2016 either. It was a young Nikita Kucherov that was on that 2016 World Cup team for Russia, right? And
This may be the best Russian decor that we've been able to see them ice.
I don't even think it's close, man. They are so much better than they were in like
Sergachev,
2016.
Provorov, Mintyukov, Gavrikov, Nikishin, Orlov.
That's
That's
very,
the
very
six
good.
in no order.
Yeah.
And before it would be like Orlov and friends. Post Sergei Gonchar, obviously.
Yeah,
All
Sergei
respect.
Gonchar. Anton Volchenkov was always around.
Oh wow, that's so dope.
He did his best. Um,
Random question, but do you think I'm just bringing this up. I have to give credit to Bleacher Report because of this, but do you think Panarin would be allowed to play on Russia's Olympic team?
yeah,
Think so?
yeah,
Even with his outspokenness from the past?
yeah. It's a guess. It's a get. Me saying yeah is a
I'm
guess.
guessing no, but
Yeah. Now, like again, to flesh this out requires a shovel and digging into more politics.
way too deep.
Um, my gut instinct, James, is if you would ask me about like a Nikita Zadorov, I would have said no.
Totally.
Panarin's a little bit different, but different means more complicated. So I actually don't have a clear answer. Like Zadorov has been like very like there hasn't been much gray minutia around Zadorov's situation. Zadorov just very
Your
outwardly
second time using the word minutia in this episode.
um
We're not allowed to use it a third time, and
okay,
if so, you get a 5 minute penalty.
okay, deal. But Zadorov's stance has been very anti-Russia government, anti-Putin. Panarin hasn't been as black and white, probably because of the repercussions of doing that to you in Russia if you do that. Um, but it's repercussions he's already had to go back. Like he had to leave to go back to Russia to deal with these repercussions. James, I
Yeah.
have no idea like what the result of that was. Right? Like
No,
I
he's
don't know.
alive.
So
I know that.
yeah, so like you're asking me this question. My honest
Doesn't
answer
talk
is
about things as much now.
yeah, like what happened? Like that's all I got. Um it
Okay, bringing us back because we just got 5 tangents deep, and you know what? I had a great time doing it. Um, the Four Nations face-off continues throughout this week and weekend. There's a lot of great hockey for you to watch. We are recording this, as you know, on the eve of Wednesday, February 12th. Tomorrow it picks back up at 5 p.m. Pacific with the United States and Finland. Um, I struggle to find words thinking about how Finland's defense will cope with the US offense. Aiden, I am going to ramble a little bit here, but 11 Finnish defensemen have played in the NHL this season, 10 of which at some point have been named to this Finland Four Nations face-off roster. The three best ones, well, probably three of the four best ones. I would say like Esa Lindell is probably the second best one. Um, Miro Heiskanen being number one, Ristolainen being three, and Yanni Hakanpää probably being number four. That's just my opinion. Are out of the lineup. They have they added, I don't know his first name, Matt and Paolo, of the Ottawa Senators, kind of. I think he's in the AHL more often than not. But yeah,
Nicholas was the first name on that. And
Nicholas Manpao. I
I know that
apologize, Nicholas. This is no offense to him. He is a player playing in the NHL, but this is a best on best tournament. And with a lot of teams in, say, best on best tournaments at the Olympics, whatever it might be, there are often teams with a weaker decor or some weaker forwards or maybe a backup goalie who just isn't at that super high elite level that a lot of these other players are at. It's fine. I am no pro athlete. I'm so far from it. All respect to you and everything you have accomplished to get to the NHL. But um, the United States forward roster boasts 13 extremely talented forwards who are going to feast on that team. Finland's only hope tomorrow, in my eyes, is UC Saros.
much in the same way, again, that we've talked about never seeing these Canadians play for Canada, Americans, whatever. Yusei Saros has also been one of the, if not the best Finnish goalie in the NHL since Pekka Rinne was at the peak of his game. And he's never suited up for Finland at the best on best level. I remember Saros as a 19-year-old stealing Finland to semifinal over Canada in the 2014 World Juniors. Sorry, stealing. It ended 5-1 Finland, but he stood on his head and he was crazy in that game. Ended up winning Finland the tournament. Well, this is his first best on best chance as well. So I'm really excited to see how, obviously guys like Aho, Puliarvi, sorry, Puliarvi. I was thinking of Rantanen and hints on that 2016 World Junior team. But uh, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like fans in Finland and fans in Sweden, they're not here watching this tournament, but much in the same way that they were talking about Connor McDavid having won the World Championship and the World Juniors. Like guys like Sebastian Aho, guys like Patrick Laine, you say Saros is an example. Miro Heiskanen would have been an example, but it's these guys that they've seen not only come up with the Finnish junior program, but even have success with the Finnish junior program. Think about how good this group of Finnish players has been at the World Junior level. They won in 2014, they won in 2016, they won in 2019, and they were finalists in 2022. And you've got all of that flavor on this Finland team. So as much as we're sitting here and we're, quite rightly casting doubt on the quality of this team. Like, I don't think we can underestimate the fact that these Finnish players are going to be just as hungry to play for Finland and succeed with Finland and with the Finnish jersey on as the Canadians and the Americans have been playing for Canada and the US, right? Saros is again, like I said, a great example and somebody who can single-handedly, I think, do it, right? Like,
Totally. I Aiden, I have to ask you, what are you doing with your awesome girlfriend Caitlin for Valentine's Day?
flying back to Maple Ridge because
You
she's
guys have
got reading week. So we are on a flight in the afternoon, and then we'll just go back to her place, her parents' house for the
nice.
evening night. Yeah. How about you? What's Hallie and James on Valentine's Day?
We are going to be hopping on a ferry and going to Vancouver Island. We are going to go hang out at my grandparents' lake house and go to my buddy's parents' restaurant called the Brie and Barrel. It's probably the nicest restaurant in Port Alberni. They recently took it over from our mayor, so that one's really enticing. It's like French Moroccan fusion, and I think the preset menu has a braised beef short rib that I am very, very, very much looking forward to. But Aiden, that dinner is on Saturday. What else is on Saturday?
Canada, USA.
That is correct. Our dinner reservation is at 7 o'clock. So I am going to put Aiden on the spot here because if he can't do this for me, then I am going to be really sad.
Oh,
So I am going to watch the first period of the game, and then I'm going to go to my dinner. And then I am going to be at my dinner until the end. So, my phone's going to be on Do Not Disturb, so it's not buzzing with hockey the entire time I'm spending quality time with my lovely girlfriend. But I'm going to need a play-by-play of important events that happen in the game and maybe a video of an important highlight or two taken on his phone and texted to me. Aiden, can you
James.
sign this contract?
You know what's funny? James knows that for a living, like I basically do this. So it's like an unfair question because he knows that I'm getting paid to I'm quite literally getting paid to do this all day by the
Mhm.
CSSHL until that point. So you're just asking me to continue work except live tweet the instead of the CSSHL action going on. I have to keep up with Canada US, which will be significantly easier because James, though that CSSHL, like we're talking dozens and dozens of games every weekend. Like I obviously, knew its size and reach just from working in junior hockey and knowing how many players come out of that league. But it's that's a major path to the NHL in Western Canada to a degree I didn't realize. So shout out Canadian School Sports Hockey League because they kind of blew my mind this week with how widespread their reach is.
I had heard a couple of team names from that league before, and I remember being astounded at how far apart they were. So I had a feeling this was kind of the case when you took the job, but I was curious how that would shape up. But Aiden, I think it's time we take it away from the Four Nations face-off. We just have a couple pieces of NHL content to talk about before we move on. Canucks defenseman Marcus Pettersson recently acquired after the fallout of the JT Miller deal comes over from Pittsburgh, immediately signs, I believe, a 6 year extension, $5.5 million.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the average annual value and cap hit on that deal. And Aiden, I think this was a very, very, very handy piece of work by General Manager Patrick Alvian. What do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I love it. I love it. I love the trade and I love the contract. I I'm really high on this guy. Again, I think last podcast he is a not nearly as physical Matthias Ekholm. Like his puck movement is very very steady, and I know that seems like such a like not huge compliment to pay a player. But you have to understand that the defensemen I've been used to on
Chaos
this
draft.
yeah, like Noah Juleson, man, it's hard. It's really hard. So to see somebody, to see somebody come in who can just play his position without ever being a liability is
Coach is porn.
yeah, it fills my heart and it's amazing. So I would have given him more money. Um, but I'm a Canucks fan that's been so deprived of serviceable NHL defensemen that you can hear that coming out.
Have you noticed how much he hits the deck? How often he falls down?
Yeah, which is funny because not Elias, forward Elias Pettersson is also notorious for doing that as well. So two of our three Petterssons just seem to always be on the ice.
Why do they fall down so much?
I think it's the way they're
Is it
built.
because they're quote unquote trying so hard?
No, it's I'm making this up on the spot, by the way, but I
Okay.
was gonna say
I like that. I like off the cuff things.
it's the Swedish body type that your legs are just so long that it's like a giraffe trying to run is kind of my thinking, and that it it doesn't take much to knock off that balance when your legs are that long. I feel like I'd always be tipping over. I have short legs though, so it's just an adjustment.
Oh God, I really hope you spend like 4 hours straight finding a compilation of moving zoom in shots of Marcus Pettersson and Elias Pettersson falling down to the ice.
It hasn't been made yet because they just got to the same
Because
team.
because you could make it and we could have a reel that goes hockey viral. Totally. Because I care so much about that. Wow. Wow, 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 wowie. Well, Aiden, moving on from that piece of Canucks news, I guess to another piece of Canuck relative discussion. Aiden, I know for a fact that you have your dream two Hart Trophy nominations so far. Two of
Yeah,
them.
yeah. Well, and
I'm
again,
going to challenge you to have a third one by the end of this discussion, which isn't hard.
no, it's not because it's Draisaitl, right? Like just the way that
Okay, fine.
yeah, the way that Leon Draisaitl's taken
Whatever.
over yeah, the way that Leon Draisaitl's taken over games for Edmonton this year, like him, McKinnon and Makar have been it's him, McKinnon, Makar, Hughes, McDavid have kind of been the five guys that to me have been the best players in the NHL this year, night in, night out, like the most consistent performers. Every time I turn on a Colorado, Edmonton, Vancouver game, they are making magic happen, all three or all five of them, sorry. Um Dreisaitl's what Dreisaitl's done this year, he like he looks like a absolute goal machine this year to an extent that I've actually only seen him look like in the playoffs. Like
Mm.
Draisaitl's always been a guy who's elevated his game in the playoffs, and it seems like we've had 55 games of playoff Leon Draisaitl in the regular season this year. So I have to give him kudos for that because it's not easy to play at that level every night. And he's been really, really, really consistently doing it well. Um, Now, MVP to me, Hart Trophy isn't most outstanding player though, right?
It's not.
It's not. Um, so my
Criteria for the award is most valuable player to his team's success.
say that again.
Most valuable player to his team's success.
Yeah. And it's both, right? It's not just most valuable player because people can make the argument that most valuable player can still be the best player. If they were the best, they were the most valuable. No, most valuable player to your team's success. So I'll ask you, James, take the individual player, Leon Draisaitl, take Nathan McKinnon, take Cale Makar off of Edmonton, off of Colorado. You can do the same exercise with Nylander in Toronto if you want. He's got 33 goals this year. I know people from Toronto want him to have some heart love. Um, to me, the impact that would have on Colorado, Edmonton, whoever, is astronomically smaller than the impact a season for Columbus or Vancouver would look like without Zach Werenski and Quinn Hughes, respectively. And my Hart Trophy conversation as of right now, it's not even close with those top two guys. Like the Columbus Blue Jackets are 1 point out of the playoffs this year. Zach Werenski plays half an hour a night, man. He's out there for half the game. And him being out there for half the game, he's not just patrolling on the back and keeping things steady. He's scoring like crazy. He's got 59 points this year. He's leading the Columbus Blue Jackets in scoring. The guy's he's an absolute warrior, man. And honestly, it feels like I've been waiting for this forever, and it just took not getting hurt at the beginning of the season, which seemed
Oh
like
yeah,
an
he gets hurt a lot.
yeah, it seemed like an impossibility for him, but finally he was able to stay healthy all season. And he's been one of the best defensemen in the NHL. And I know that saying Zach Werenski deserves the Hart Trophy, it's a reach for a lot of people. But when you combine how much he means to them defensively, how much he does offensively, and how much he plays, like it is his impact on that team is astronomical. Now, if Columbus doesn't make the playoffs, I would look at most valuable to your team's success and say, realistically, what success, right? So that's kind of why my asterisk here for these two teams, because all the same things I said about Werenski and Columbus are exactly as true about Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. Hughes has 59 points, and he's, I think, 25 points ahead of the next highest scoring player, which is JT Miller, I think. So even if you take off Miller from the Canucks roster, that number gets even bigger with the the next highest active scorer for Vancouver. Um, the Canucks are 3 points ahead of Calgary for a playoff spot right now. So honestly, James, like I I still have Draisaitl in third place. Draisaitl, McKinnon, Makar. You can honestly pick your favorite out of the three of them to be third place in the hard voting. As of right now, I'm giving it to like technically I'm giving it to Quinn Hughes. Vancouver's in the playoffs, but if Columbus ends up in the playoffs, it might have to be Zach Werenski for me. Like his control and his impact on that team is immense. And I really obviously hope it gets recognized. Like the Hart Trophy for how long has been a forwards award, James. Like Carey Price won the Hart in 2015, deservedly so. Um, Before that, when was the last defenseman to win the Hart Trophy?
Chris Pronger, I think.
And that was 0506, right? If I'm remembering correctly.
That was a 506.
Or was it before that,
I think it was pre-lockout.
pre-lockout? If it's pre-lockout, we're talking more than 20 years ago. That was why I was asking. Was it's almost been 20 years since we've seen
99, 2000, first
okay.
time Bobby Orr.
Yeah, 25 years since we've had a defenseman win the Hart, and you just said it, first time since Bobby Orr. Like defensemen and goaltenders to me can have as much of an impact on your team as a forward does, right? And we've kind of seen defensemen get shafted in this voting a little bit.
Mhm.
We've seen goaltenders like I remain very very adamant that 2021 22 Igor Shesterkin was my heart winner all season long. What he was doing for the Rangers was unbelievable for the majority of that season. And I think if he doesn't falter a little bit, he went from like 100 out of 100 to 98 out of 100 in March and April. And I think that lost him the award to Matthews, but aside from that, like he deserved it all year. But it's the forwards that get the attention. It's the forwards that get the love. So I'd be really, really happy to see, for the first time in a really long time, a goaltender or a defenseman get the Hart Trophy. I think two defensemen should win it this year. Whoever makes the playoffs.
Cool. All right. That is a very, very solid pair of points for a very solid pair of defensemen that unfortunately won't be able to play together at this Four Nations face-off. We didn't talk about that. Quinn Hughes missing the tournament due to injury. I really, really, it was kind of sad and kind of funny reading the little article about the text between Quinn and Jack saying, "Hey Jack, not going to be able to play." And it was very few words exchanged, but you could tell that there was some emotion in there. It's unfortunate because that is probably one of the most important players to that US team's success, and that would have been a lot of fun to watch. But I digress. We will get back to Four Nations stuff on the next pod. But time for some fun here. Aiden did this week put up our little Instagram thing where we asked for some questions from our listeners and subscribers, whatever that might be. And I know we have at least one. Is it more than one?
We got two in. We got two in.
We got two. All right. Just so you guys know, we are reading this blind. Usually we do put them down, but this time I asked Aiden to do them blind.
So both are Canucks related, Canucks adjacent at least. One of them asks, it's asking your, so I'll ask you first. What's your favorite Louis Eriksson moment? Louis Eriksson just retired from professional hockey. Shout out Louis Eriksson at the age of 39. He just called it quits.
Mm.
Fantastic NHL career, Dallas Star, Boston Bruin, Vancouver Canuck, and Arizona Coyote. Um, Canucks fans and the Canucks community will remember him in Vancouver, in which he was signed to a huge contract that immediately aged poorly. But the Canucks, despite the fact that he was eating up 20% of the team's cap to be a fourth liner, Vancouver fans in the city embrace him. He became very affectionately known as the empty net assassin because a very large portion of his goals somehow were empty netters, which again was somewhat indicative of his time there and inability to score for Vancouver at the same rate he did in other spots. But this was a very, very good Dallas Star and a very serviceable Boston Bruin, and then an all around good guy when he got to Vancouver. So shout out Louis Eriksson on a great career. Personally, my favorite moment was his Canucks debut, in which in the first period he scored on his own net because that set up pretty much exactly how his entire Canucks tenure was going to go. So that's my answer, James.
I had to go look for this while I could find it, but I didn't actually think I was gonna be able to find it, but it's a Reddit article I found as it come out on our Canucks, like okay, yeah, 3 years ago. I remember this coming up as like a suggested article on Google, and the I the headline isn't important, but what this person starts writing is no one can sit on the bench like Louis Eriksson. He took sitting to a whole nother level. We might never find another player who can sit as well as him. And that's the whole thing. And it got like 20,000 upvotes.
The other question is specifically at Vancouver. Sorry, James, they don't ask about Colorado. It is very, very specifically the most aggressive player on the Canucks. I think it's one answer, man. Like it's gotta be Keefe, right? Kiefer Sherwood's leading the NHL in hits. He's missed a huge portion of the season, and he still might break the NHL record for most hits in a season, which is a really cool small positive
Super
in
cool.
Vancouver's season that has had no small or big positives really, aside from getting Marcus Pettersson, in my opinion. um,
And I don't think that that's something that a week or two ago would have been super concrete. I mean, JT Miller was just recently a Canuck, and this is someone who screamed at his goalie. Like,
Screamed at his goalie, man. Screamed at his video coach from the stories that have come out. But I'm not going to get into anything until we have things corroborated. That's
this
how we
this
work
was
here.
a high intensity fella, so I
Yeah.
will say he's fairly aggressive. I have watched him like definitely chatter some angry things while body checking people, and you know, I enjoyed watching him. So, yeah, I mean, the aggressive stuff, it's fun to watch. I mean, hockey is a sport that can get pretty high intensity, and I mean, that passion for the game sometimes shows in different colors. So, I mean, there's going to be different guys on different nights who are like that. But on the other hand, there are those ones that stick out. I wish we could say Colorado because Nathan McKinnon did. And this is not the first time I've pointed out on this podcast. And it certainly won't be the last. Nathan McKinnon did take off his helmet and throw it at a guy once.
I wasn't that was that Connor Garland or am I
I
misremembering that?
believe it was Dyson Mayo.
On the Coyotes though?
Yeah.
I feel yeah, I can
Garland was
picture
already a Canuck.
okay, okay. Yeah, because that does feel more recent than Garland being a Coyote, but I can picture it being against Arizona.
Lots of fun. Well, in I guess one more thing. Did you watch a movie at all this week? Are we doing that little
Ooh,
segment?
I watched a couple and I'll I'll glaze over the first one because I don't want to dig too far into it.
Mhm.
Some people like really, really, really hard to watch horror movies. Um,
Mm.
I do to an extent. I watched Coralie Fargeet's The Substance this week. Have you seen that?
God, no. I don't do horror.
Okay, it is a Best Picture nominee, which for a
Oh,
horror movie is like very high praise. It was it was a lot. And there were times during that movie where I thought I loved it, and times during that movie where I thought I hated it. It is overall worth a watch, but if movies affect your stomach negatively, I wouldn't. On a lighter note, I watched. Have you seen The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, starring Nicolas Cage
yes.
and Pedro Pascal? I did
Yes.
finally watch that for the first time this week too, and it was hilarious. This is the Nick Cage I love, which is a self-aware, goofy Nick Cage. And Pedro Pascal is Pedro Pascal. It is hard to not fall in love with his goofy Latin persona in this movie. A lot of fun, and it was trying to be a stereotypical Hollywood blockbuster kind of like parody a little bit, right? Like a little bit of satire on what stereotypical Hollywood blockbusters look like. Um, but also somehow served as a really good stereotypical Hollywood blockbuster. So all around, I really like the movie. And if you like comedy movies that are about washed up actors, which is so many comedy movies, because guess who's making those movies, right? This is just another one, and it does a really good job at it. How about you? Movies this week?
That movie you just mentioned is also the one where the meme of Pedro Pascal driving while tripping on mushrooms is and looking up at the sky and laughing and then looking worried and then laughing again. That is exactly where that's from. And I don't know about you, but I get really satisfied when I find a meme in a movie. I
Oh yeah,
watch
yeah.
God,
I also
there's an
specifically.
ensemble comedy. I can't remember. I wonder if I think it's He's Just Not That Into You. It's like an ensemble comedy full of a bunch of A-list actors. Ben Affleck, Scarlett Johansson, Bradley Cooper, list goes on, Jennifer Connelly. There's just so many in there. But the meme of the guy, there's like a bald guy looking down at the computer going, and then there's nobody can see this except for Aiden, but it's a guy raising his hands and looking down very exasperated and confused. And there's like four people looking down at a laptop screen. And that was a meme back like, I don't know, 14 years ago. And I just randomly came across it while watching this movie 2 years ago. And I paused it and I just sat there and smiled and relished in my find. But yeah, movie for me. Uh Dude, I did not watch anything new, but I rewatched Frozen 1 and 2.
I haven't seen Frozen 2.
Um, if you like dial back the charm from did you like the first one?
I have complicated feelings about the first one.
If you dial back the charm from the first one at 30% and then throw in like politics, atoning for one's actions, and like a little bit of nerdy lore instead, then like yeah, that's exactly what this is. And in a way, I like it more. In a way, I like it less because like you can definitely feel that it's less humble.
Okay, yeah, valid.
But also, it's like I don't know. I like getting real nerdy, and I like little twists and turns and stuff like that. And there's rock giants and like little tiny fire lizard thing.
Wasn't there those like rock people in the first one too?
Oh yeah. Those are just like little rock people.
Oh, so there's like those, but like
No. Completely different rock people.
oh, okay.
You don't get it yet. You don't know
You
anything about rock
yeah,
people. Well, okay. At this point, if we are getting this amused talking about rock people, I know that I
yeah.
have to go to bed because my work alarm goes off in a whopping 6.5 hours. So I want to thank all of you guys for listening to this episode. I want to wish all of you guys the best time watching the Four Nations face off. And if you have a significant other, or even if you're just celebrating by yourself, a great Valentine's Day as well. Take it easy. Thank you so much for listening. Without further ado, let's roll that outro. Thanks, guys.